There's our top speed.
Is this it, RC drivers? The missing link in the Tamiya lineup on the workbench here is the new Tamiya squash fan on the GF-02 chassis. Now, the body itself has some significance to it, but I'm actually more interested in the chassis, and here's the reason why. I was a huge fan of the G601, still am actually, and I liked it because of the long wheelbase, and the 6-wheel drive is pretty cool, but I always thought, like, what happens if I could just lock out that center and have that nice long wheelbase chassis for the better handling? I thought it would give me that little extra I was looking for over, let's say, the GF-01 chassis, which is a fun chassis because it's a wheelie machine, but I like something with a little bit of handling where I can take it off a jump and watch it land without bouncing around. And sometimes, you know, like a square platform like the GF-01 is just a little too edgy. So that's where I think this GF-02 is gonna come into play. It's got the long wheelbase to it, it's got a little bit larger of a tire, and it's got this really cool panel van body. Let's start talking about the body itself. The front is obviously gonna look really familiar, a lot of significance to it. It's just like the Midnight Pumpkin, and that's where the play on squash fan comes from. But they nailed the front of it perfectly, just in Lexan. The hood looks awesome, and then it goes into this large panel cab area. And then the rear section is new. Obviously, it's a full cap on the back, twin doors, small taillights, very period appropriate. Now, you're gonna have to paint this up. This is a full build-up kit. You're gonna have to pick up the paints, which I'll have in the video description below, but it'll take some time. You obviously have to cut out the decals like every other Tamiya kit, but let's get into the chassis. Look at the long wheelbase on this. Now, what's really special about this, beyond you get to build it the way you want to, is you could also set it up for 4-wheel steer. This is a 4-wheel drive chassis. All the gears are located in the monocoque setup here, so we've got just tons of gears running throughout this. Gear differentials front and rear like we've seen on Tamiya vehicles before. Metal out drives, metal dog bones, which is great. The motor is mounted in the center, and it's honestly a really fun chassis to put together. Once you get the gears in there, you're gonna spin it around a little bit. Really fun to look at. As usual, there's a mix of bushings. We're used to that from Tamiya. Now let's get on to the suspension. Basically, it's made up of suspension components we've seen before on the GF-01. Just 2-piece arms, fixed upper links, steering knuckles on the front, plastic hub carriers in the rear, and then friction shocks. So it's gonna be a little bit bouncy. The steering is just a simple crank in the front, and the servo's mounted on the side. There's a servo saver. And again, they give you all of the parts so you could go and add a separate crank to the rear and do rear steer on it. I just have it set up right now with front steer. Again, I'm kind of looking to go over jumps and stuff like that, and steering off of jumps with 4-wheel steer gets a little hairy. Battery mounts up top, and again, they do give you the 540 motor. They give you the Hobby Wing speed controller, which has a Tamiya plug on it. I'm gonna have to go swap that out, actually. Kind of wish they'd give us like an XT60 or something. Time to make that change, Tamiya. And then, you know, you got the tall body mounts, at least they're braced so the body doesn't wiggle around on some, like on some other trucks. And then all 4 corners, we've got these chevron style. It's like a split chevron on these turbo wheels, white wheels. Really good look to it. Overall, with this van body, I love the way this thing just looks sitting here, and obviously we have to see how it performs. So let's head outside. Hit up the local park for the squash fan, guys. I figured it'd be the perfect spot. We got a little bit of rock here, some grass to run around in, and I found a couple of spots where I could jump it later. Had to bust out the plastic ramp for a little airtime. Here we go. Right into my foot. Actually running this thing on 3S, there's full throttle, and it is bucking around. Oh, no, crash. Oh, and saved it. Ever since they put these Hobby Wing speed controllers in that can take 3S, I just go with the 3S. Although this truck is, it probably would rather have a 2S pack in it. But I like the sound of that motor spooling up. Do the rough stuff. Yeah, a little bouncing. Yeah, watching them turn. Whoa. So this thing is bucking around. I was not expecting it. I mean, I thought it was gonna be a little bouncy because of those shocks, but it just starts like teetering back and forth as it bounces. It's got plenty of steering though. Oh, catch a little air off the bike ramp. Yeah, there we go. Another send. It's got a lot of bounce at the end there. You can see those rear wheels just bucking around because there's no damping to those shocks. Ow, 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 oh. All right, let's wrap things up here and talk about the GF-02's performance, and it's not exactly what I was expecting. I thought with the longer wheelbase on this truck, we would have something that handled pretty well. We could have a lot of fun with it, but it's got some shock issues. Every little problem I was encountering while driving it could all be traced back to the shocks. And they're just a friction damper. They don't have any oil in them, so they're just erratic. And so when I was driving the truck, let's say through the grass, it would just start to buck. All that springiness would just keep going. The energy would push the truck back and forth, and you literally have to roll back on the throttle to settle it back down, or you'd start flipping the truck over. Also, going through the corners, you could see just so much chassis lean. You know, that battery is mounted up pretty high, and so it was just, you know, the spring holding the resistance back. Finally, the truck would just roll and, you know, I'd scratch up the body, it would roll over, I'd have to go flip it. So I think these shocks really need to be changed out. I mean, even just driving through the gravel, you could see the rear shocks just going up and down, up and down. So that would, I think, will definitely fix it, a shock upgrade to it. And the truck actually steers well. I mean, almost too well. When I was going through the corners, the front end would dive down, it would bite, and the truck would actually roll over. It would want to turn too tight. It would want to oversteer. So I'm not even gonna throw the four-wheel steering on it. I think with the higher CG, with these higher tires, it's just gonna wanna roll on you if you use four-wheel steering. It's a neat option to have. If you're going slow, maybe you wanna use it. But I think, you know, if you do wanna use it, again, go with the shock change and maybe go with one of their other tires, like let's say the GF-01 tires, the chevrons. It's a little bit wider, a little bit lower, just help plant this truck a little bit. It's a fun truck, I enjoyed building it. It definitely looks really cool, but I think it's gonna need a few tweaks for you to enjoy it in the backyard.